Well, I was quite surprised, actually, even though I obviously work in the nutrition profession, how much salt is still in bread. So there has been an effort to reduce salt for many years in bread, and some manufacturers have managed to do that over a gradual process so it doesn't put us off buying their product by gradually reducing it. But there still were quite high levels in some particular breads on the market now.
And in fact, the comparison that they made, which has made all the headlines, is this more salt per slice than a packet of crisps, which does make you think, because you don't really think of bread as particularly salty, certainly not compared with a packet of crisps.
No, you're quite right. And if you eat a slice of bread, you don't think, "Ooh, this is salty," like you would like a bag of crisps. So it really does seem quite surprising, yes.
So is that something that has gradually been changing? And do you think we need to get a message out there about bread then? Because I don't naturally think of it as salty either.
No, and as I say, many manufacturers have been working towards reducing salt. There is a national reformulation programme which we are trying to get salt levels down in bread, but still there were quite high levels in many manufacturers, whereas there were some that have done great efforts and they reduced it, but it wasn't equal across the board with all manufacturers and all types of breads. So definitely there's a lot more work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and it looked like they were fairly common names, well-known brands, and it was the majority of the breads that they tested that had this amount of salt. How much salt do you think we should be having? And should we be checking all the time the salt content?
Very much so. So we, as adults and over 11s, we're allowed to have 6 grams a day, but we don't need that in our diet. We could get away with a lot less. We only need a very small amount. And 75% of our salt is in the food that we buy, manufactured foods, particularly bread and breakfast cereals. So you might think you're buying a good health product, but it could have quite high levels of salt in it. So we do need to do something about that. And one thing that's very important to do is check the label. So we do have a traffic light system on most products, red, amber, green. So look for things that have, and it would be labelled as sodium generally, not so much salt. Look for a green label for the sodium content so that it will be lower for you.
And why does it matter, our salt consumption?
Because salt is linked with high blood pressure, and if we have high blood pressure, we're much increased risk for coronary heart disease and stroke. And millions of people are losing their lives, believed directly related to salt intake. So we do very much need to do something about this.
But the thing is, we sort of get used to salt, and you miss it if it's not there, don't you?
I think it's something you have to learn to adjust to. So try and reduce your levels of salt over a long period of time. So personally, I don't add salt to any of my food, and I try very much to try and make my own stuff. And if I have something that has got quite a high salt content, I find it quite personally not very nice to eat because I've got so used to not eating much salt. So try and cut down, check for those labels. Don't add it to your cooking, or if you're used to adding it to cooking, try and reduce it. Or add a different flavouring, something like lemon juice or chili flakes or herbs, other spices. All those sort of things can add flavouring without the salt. And try and make your own versions of things. You know, instead of buying ready-made sauces, try and make it from scratch. It'll be cheaper that way as well. And just keep an eye on what you're buying. Reduced salt versions of things are great as well.
Yeah, it does seem to be going that way. Now, is that regulation? You said something about some guidelines? I mean, do we need tougher guidelines on this, or are food manufacturers complying and working in the right direction?
I think many manufacturers are doing a great effort towards this, but they could do more. The problem that we have is that you do need a bit of salt in bread because it's needed for the texture and the flavour, and it does keep the bread fresher for longer. So I think some of the manufacturers have struggled with how they can keep the bread on the market and keep the shelf life long, but while trying to move towards these targets. But more work does need to be done on that. And I know Action on Salt have recommended perhaps that bread manufacturers could be looking towards using the reduced salt products, something like low salt. See if those could be used in bread.
So it seems to me that we have moved some way on this. I seem to remember, like at school dinners, you'd have salt and pepper on the table, and it would be normal that you'd pile a load of salt on to whatever you were eating, whether it needed it or not. And that seems to be less of a thing now.
Yes, I mean, you don't really see that, do you? You'd have to ask for the salt or look for a tiny little sachet or something like that if you were eating out. So, yes, I don't think everybody is chucking the salt on or adding it in cooking quite like they were. But as I say, 75% of our salt intake comes from manufactured foods. So we're kind of, even if we're doing the right thing at home, if we're buying products, then we are getting the hidden salt. So we need to get the food industry to work more on the reformulation of foods and try and get that salt in, content down over a period of time.
Yeah, once again, it is these processed, particularly ready meals, that seem to be the villain of the piece. And there's been so much said about them recently. And from what I've been reading, the UK, we seem to consume more of these ready-made chilled meals than the rest of Europe, certainly. Why do you think we're so caught up with these instant meals?
I don't know. I guess there is an issue of lack of cooking skills. Always has been. We stopped teaching in schools a while ago, got rid of kitchens in schools. We need to get more people to be able to cook, but also there's the convenience. We work more hours than the rest of Europe, I understand. It's not just the ready meals, though. I mean, salt is hidden in things like gravy. It's in cheese, bacon, ham, pickles, smoked meat and fish. All these sort of things have salt. Crisps, pizza, you name it. It's all there. Even sweets.
But it's what makes it taste nice, isn't it?
Well, exactly. It is, but you can adjust your taste buds to get used to less salt, and it would be much better for you.